Hello everyone and welcome, blimey that's loud, I can't hear myself think. Welcome back to Laurence Plays for what is probably going to be the final episode of this Factorio Space Age stream, because, you know, I've done nearly everything at this point. As you can see over here, my ship is nearly at the shattered planet. I've built a little bit of everything. I've got all the sciencing. At the moment the science has just stopped sciencing, but in theory the science can science. So I suspect we're going to be getting to the shattered planet in relatively soon, and then we'll just have a look around and see how things have gone and talk about how things went and perhaps what I'd do differently if I was to do it all over again. So hello everyone, hello Inks, hello Pink Dragon, welcome. Good to have you here. I don't recognise the name Pink Dragon. Are you new to the channel, or are you someone else who's renamed themselves? Alright, so one thing I do need to talk about is that I made some slight changes to this ship between streams. So on Monday, I improved the ship a little bit. I rearranged all the weaponry on the front. So there's now, well, at least there was originally a solid wall of railguns across the front, then a solid wall of machine gun turrets, solid wall of laser turrets, and a solid wall of rocket launchers. These were, well, the railguns were mostly generic, boring ones. Then the machine gun turrets are all legendary. The laser turrets are basically all epic. and the rocket turrets are mostly rare with the odd epic one in there, just to sort of spice things up a little bit, because that was what I was able to make with the resources that I had available on my various planets, and so that gives them a bit more range, which I think which has meant which I think is a good thing, because I've ended up moving some of the guns back a bit. Previously, the gun turrets and some of the lasers were up here interleaved with the rail guns, but I just wanted to have silly numbers of all of them, so I upgraded this and just added complete rows of absolutely everything. Unfortunately, it hasn't been completely secure. This railgun turret here on the front left has been destroyed at least 3 times over. It might have been more than that. If we look at if we look at the production and the kills, or rather the losses over the last 10 hours, which is basically the time it's been flying outwards. Yeah, we lost the quality 2 one first, and then we lost 3 quality 1s. So we've lost four of these railgun turrets. At least 3 of them have been lost off this front corner here, because I've seen those go, and that's meant I've had to, in order to get that to carry on working, I've had to pull out a couple of the ones in here, because I only brought a few spares with me, which is a bit unfortunate, and for some reason it is always this corner. At least every time I've seen it, it's been this corner. And there was some suggestion in the stream last week that perhaps that's because this belt with rockets on it runs from right to left, and therefore the rocket launchers over here get the ammunition a little bit later, or rather these ones get it at a higher priority, and therefore if anything's going to get starved, it's going to be the launchers over here. Now, I do have the system that monitors for how much ammunition we have on the ship, and then controls the speed. At the moment, we're going at speed 2 out of 3, because we've got more than 2,000. We've got exactly 2,000 rockets, about 2,000 rockets, which is enough to set the ship to run at speed of 2. And that's why we're gradually accelerating up to the speed of about 130 kilometers a second. So we're going decently quickly, and we'll eventually reach the shattered planet. But in the meantime, yeah, there's been a bit of problem with the odd railgun being lost. One thing I did notice, which is quite interesting, is the rockets tend to bunch up quite a lot. And with a bit of thought, that makes sense, because they're being loaded out onto the belt down here. They're being side-loaded on, so if there's a load of them coming through like this, if there's a gap in the belt, then they'll just get thrown onto it, and there'll be a few more or less on their own in the middle of on the belt, and therefore they'll be easily grabbed up by the rocket launchers as they go past. However, if some of those have made it past, like these ones have, any rockets that come out at that point will just be added on to that solid stream of them. So it'll fill in the gaps, and then they'll be added onto the back. So you get these little pauses when the rockets aren't quite going out quite solidly. And so that means you end up with these long chains that sort of naturally get longer and longer and have their gaps filled in, which is quite interesting. But that does mean they're not very evenly distributed, and so sometimes we get lots and lots of rockets. So we get big gaps in the rockets travelling around the belt, followed by a huge string of lots of them being packed close together. Yes, I think you said you mirrored it, Nogard. Yeah, that makes sense. I could have fed the rockets in from the middle, or in from the outside towards the inside. It would have taken a bit more belting, but there's plenty of space up here, so it wouldn't have been too difficult. It did strike me as an easier way to do that would perhaps be to put in a splitter down here, and then have some of these rockets just be added into the belt up here in the middle. But I don't think that's really been necessary. There have been a few cases where the launchers over on the side here have run out, but it's usually very, very brief, and they get reloaded quite quickly afterwards. Another thing that occurred to me as a possibility was to put in a splitter here that would take half of the rockets off to be put onto this belt up here, and then have this not feed back out onto the belt going down the side, have the other half coming across here. So in theory, whenever we've got a decent number of rockets, well, when we've got many rockets at all in the system, there'd be a solid line of them across here, because they wouldn't be dropping out at the end. And that would probably also work as well. So there are many ways that this could be done differently, but it was good enough as is, so I haven't tweaked it too much. So there was one other big change that I did make, though. So previously, when I last sent the ship out, before I did this redesign, it was getting through bullets much faster than everything, or rather, the bullets were the limiting factor. So I put some extra bullet production on the back of the ship. After it had gone out a gigameter or two, or maybe a little bit less, I realised that actually the extra bullet production I put in had not been used at all. In fact, as is, are we even using these ones here? Where's the numbers? Products finished. Okay, yeah, these have made about 20,000 each, so these have been in use. Possibly not on this particular flight. They may have been on a previous one. So, but the ones down the bottom here hadn't been used at all. So I've replaced the system I put in down at the bottom here that was making more bullets with another one to make more rockets. And I had to sort of cobble this together out of the bits and pieces I already had on the ship. So I got the cryo plants by pulling up the ones that were previously making science packs in here. I got the chemical plants and the crushers. I had enough, just about enough of those. I don't think I needed to steal any of those from up here. And the assembly machines I had quite a few of as well, especially after I'd ripped up some of the extra bullet production that wasn't in use. And so I've managed to recreate some extra rocket production over here. Now, it's not running quite as quickly as the one above, mostly because I don't have quite as fast machines. These are normal, generic, boring cryo plants, as opposed to these legendary cryo plants. Well, 2 legendary cryo plants I've got up here. So it's not making as many rockets, therefore not making as many explosives. Therefore, it's not making as many rockets, so the output just isn't quite as high. But still, you know, it's better than it was before. And that's creating quite a lot of extra rockets. I then discovered that the big limiting factor on it at that point was the water. These pipes were emptying very, very quickly. And so I fixed that by putting in some additional grabometrons here that are just grabbing the ice chunks off the belts as they go past across the bottom here, crushing them down, getting some ice out of it, and then anything that's left over, the uncrushed chunks are getting chucked back out here and then being side-loaded back onto the belt over here. And there are enough gaps on the belt that that's been working fine. And so with that and a judicious use of large quantities of speed modules and beacons and so on, I've actually managed to keep these pipes full. Over here, these cryo plants are running flat out. They are absolutely fine for input. And yeah, there is just about enough coal coming in. You can see, yes, you can see there's some in here. So impressively, given that I didn't do any maths at all, these cryo plants and these chemical plants are almost perfectly balanced for speed. So the amount of coal available has been visible through here, but not visible up here for basically forever. So they seem to be perfectly balanced, which is ridiculous and very, very unlikely, but it seems to have happened. Also, I've just noticed that there's actually no speed modules in this beacon, so that's doing absolutely nothing apart from perhaps slowing the machines down. So because they're reducing the effectiveness of this beacon. So I'll pull that out for now. 3996, very, very nearly there. And so, yeah, this is a little area down here that is able to make a few more rockets, and that's allowed me to fly that bit faster. I couldn't be bothered to carefully balance the amount of sulfur and carbon that's being produced, so we've got this waterfall of carbon and sulfur coming off the side here, and it's still not processing the carbon fast enough, but it's okay, it's working fine, so I haven't worried about it too much. Yeah. And so I think those are the only real changes I made to the ship. It was slowed down. We're down to 2 engines now. But we are very nearly there. Look at that. Only 1,200 kilometres to go. 1,000. 900. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Bing! We have arrived. We have arrived at the Shattered Planet. To be honest, it looks pretty similar to not being at the Shattered Planet. I don't know if that was really much of an achievement. My biggest concern at this point is that the ship is now stopped, and therefore we're probably going to get a huge rock come flying in from the side and smacking into the side of the ship and destroying absolutely everything. But you know what? We've made it. We've got here. Let's at least celebrate that a little bit, and then turn the ship round and head back again, I suppose, because I don't think there's anything else out here for me. We've still got loads and loads of fusion power cells left. That's what's like about 750, 800 of them, so that's going to be absolutely fine. Yeah, we made it. This is a complete anticlimax. I was hoping there'd at least be an achievement for this, but no, it just says congratulations. It doesn't even say congratulations. It just says you are here. So okay, lovely. Well, we have made it. So now you see up here, the light has already gone green because we've now got more than 3,000 rockets available. With the ship stationary, it's very, very easy to pull in, to make the ammunition faster than it's being used, because we no longer have these rockets ploughing into the front of the ship. We'll give it a... Yeah, see, that's what I'm afraid of. That sort of rock. So I think we're actually, despite me saying we'll stay here and deal with some more... deal with some of the... try and produce a large quantity of ammunition. With that rock coming in, I'm kind of scared, so I'm going to run away from it. Because we can't shoot that. Well, I mean, okay, we can. We can shoot it with the lasers. But the lasers aren't going to do much to it, because it's a huge rock, and they're basically laser-proof. We've done... Yeah, so there we go. We've done about 10% of the damage to it now. So we'll do that, and then, you know what? Let's turn around. Let's go back to the Shattered Planet, because that's how physics works. And we can stop there for a moment, and again go back to trying to recreate some rockets and things, because I feel it would be nice to have a completely full belt before we depart. Oh, nope, I take that back. The okay, well the ship is now dead. So I'm kind of curious about that. Why was that suddenly so bad? Answers on a postcard, because I have no idea why all of us... Oh, I suppose the ship was flying faster. Right, yeah, that'll be it. So my guns across the front are capable of dealing with 130 kilometres a second worth of asteroids, but not with the 180 or whatever the ship gets up to when it's going at full speed. That's probably why. I mean, I have to admit, I wasn't really expecting there to be much else at the Shattered Planet, because I am aware that the Shattered Planet there is supposed to be a sort of a stretch goal, shall we say. Because it is something that's just there to make people like me go, oh, there is the thing I should do. It's not really part of the game. All the achievements and things like that are for getting to the edge of the solar system and going out and getting some Promethium and so on. So, yeah. Right, sorry, I missed your second message, Pinker. So, okay, yeah, normally sleeping fair enough, I guess. If you normally have to sleep at this time, then I can understand not making it to the streams. Yes, that was from the same run that I started at the end of the last stream. Although I did make a couple of tweaks to the ship, mostly making more rockets rather than bullets. Yeah, but the interesting thing was, though, as I was saying, previously the bullets were not the limit. Sorry, the bullets were the limiting factor, and that's why I started making more of them. But now, clearly, or I say now, when before the ship got absolutely wrecked by that stream of massive rocks, the limiting factor on the ship was was rockets. So I switched back over again, which is weird. And if I'd known it was going to be rockets beforehand, I'd have designed it differently. I'd have designed it from scratch. Well, not from scratch. I'd have designed it last week to make more rockets, but it was absolutely fine with rockets and just very, very short of bullets. So it's interesting that things were so different. And that comes back a little bit to what I've been grumbling about a few times before, where to really play with the spaceships, you have to design a ship, maybe make some tweaks to it, and then send it out for a 10-hour flight, or maybe a 5-hour flight, before you can actually find out where the problems are with it and what needs to be sorted. So it's a bit iffy, I think, in my opinion. Nope, get nothing. Yeah, nothing at all. Not even achievement, which is a shame. Yeah, the anticlimax. It was a bit. Oh, so yes, I see what you mean. Yes, the fun is in the journey. But yeah, but at least normally you'll get, I don't know, a piece of end game tech or an achievement or something else to go off and do next. But no, I fully take your point. In Factorio, particularly when you get to sort of end game or post end game challenges, the fun is entirely in seeing, can I do this thing? Like you don't get an achievement for doing 1,000 science per second or 1,000 or per minute or 10,000 per minute or whatever's a bit more than I'm currently doing. But you get that personal sense of achievement for going, yes, I did the thing, haha, well done me, and that's about all you get from it. So you're quite right. It is. I suppose that's the nature of sandbox games. You go in and you make your own objectives, and therefore, if you've made your own objective, even if it's one that's sort of strongly implied by the game, like getting to the Shattered Planet, it still is your objective, and therefore the game can't congratulate you for it because how would it know? Also, the what's the name? The Abomination is broken again. That looks like too many blue circuits to me. So let's take out some of those, some of that concrete. Why is there concrete in two different slots? What's going on there? Cogs are allowed to be in there, really. So those can stay. There's a lot of iron plates and quite a lot of copper. Still a lot of blue circuits. Let's get rid of some more. There we go. Now we can start making beacons again. Lovely. I wonder if a quality railway wagon has a bigger capacity. I'm betting not, because that's not the sort of way the game tends to go. No, it's just healthier. That sucks. The storage size should be bigger on a higher quality railway wagon, because that's the sort of thing it can do. That's what it does, and therefore the quality should be improved. But never mind. I don't think it's the turnaround that was the problem there. I think it was. I think it was the speed, as I was saying. So, and I just didn't have enough guns across the front to protect the ship from the extra speed it was doing. That's the only thing that could have been different, I think. Warp drive machine. So warp drive machine meaning something that goes a bit faster. I think probably not. Speed home is where yeah. Well, it is downhill on the way back, yes. But in theory, if the guns could keep up and the ammunition production was the limiting factor, then on the way back it would run out of ammunition sooner and just be using less engines all of the time. So I think it would probably have been okay if it hadn't been for the guns getting overwhelmed. Not sure what you mean by 3 weeks of Schedule 1. But yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one who got a ship out there and then it just went, oh dear, and got immediately wrecked. Oh well. Right, just must remember to save in a different save file at the end of this, so I can make videos about the no longer ship that I used to have. Okay, so I think that means I have now. Oh, warp drive machines, the Space Age version of Factorio. I see. I won't say no. Well, I will say not next because we already have some plans. But I will say, but I certainly won't say never because that does sound like a lot of fun and very, very much the sort of thing I would do. So I'll give you a little bit of a sneak preview. We're going to be starting up a new Factorio Space Age stream with those of us who were playing the previous K2SE stream plus Sophia. So we're going to have an extra person. We're going to have 5 of us basically playing through Factorio Space Age, but with basically all of the other planets we can find that are currently in a playable state. So it's probably going to take us a little while. But it's going to be more Factorio, but with a little bit more knowledge now. So perhaps some of the things will be built up a little bit more intelligently. We shall see. Okay, I haven't heard of that one. No, I do have a couple of ideas. I'm also planning to start playing what's it called? The Last Starship, which is it's not quite a roguelike. It's a spaceship builder where you can then fly around the galaxy, running away from an anomaly and trying to complete missions and rescue people and stuff like that as you head outwards. I played a very, very early alpha of it a while back, and yeah, it was a lot of fun, but a bit limited at the time. They're now on a much later alpha, and so I bought it, and I thought I'd give that a shot and see what it's like. So that'll be my Wednesday night streams for at some point, because the Monday night stream will be the new Factorio stream, and I'm going to upgrade some of these belts to blue because I started doing that ages ago, and then I ran out of bots or blue belts or iron or something. So I kind of want to finish it off. In the interest of let's go around the factory and finish off things that I didn't finish previously. So I'll do that much of it for now and then come back and grab a bit more in a moment. Okay, so I'm not going to end the stream here. This is not going to be a 20-minute stream, even though I reckon I've now finished the game, because I've got to the Shattered Planet. I've done all of the non-infinite researches and quite a lot of the infinite ones, but then that's all been going really quite well. But there's lots of science to be done, as is always the case. Let's stick a couple of those in and just really hammer the Prometheum science production. See how that goes. And also, I'm going to go around and have a look at all the factories I've built up, see how they're running, and talk about what I would perhaps do differently. Why are you getting? What are you guys doing? Have we got some more? Okay, well, I understand why the bots are dying. Let's try and do something about that. No artillery within range. Where's my artillery train? Where is my artillery train? Here it is. No, it isn't. But this one's got stuck. So you need to clear off. Go back to calcite pickup. That is a minor problem. Where's my artillery train? Why am I looking for it with a Mark 1 eyeball rather than actually just finding the damn thing with the search options? Train to the stop. You, where are you? Where are you? Oh, you're there. Oh, I see. I was building up over here. Right. Okay. Well, go to this outpost instead. Go park over here. I'm surprised that's outside artillery range. Actually, where was I shooting at? Hang on a minute. Wait, what? Have you run out of ammunition? You've run out of ammunition. Stupid thing. Right. Okay. You, actually, give me that train. Train. Goodness sake. Right, you go back to outpost supply because you've run out of ammunition. That's why it's not working. Gotcha. And there's a lot of biters around for reasons. I don't understand why these bots have suddenly started doing everything. Oh, it's because I did a big upgrade over here, so all my bots are trying to fly back in from where they were building up this area over here because I needed more uranium, which is not happening. I very half a jobbed that. Oops. Right, and so they're all now trying to fly back over to the main factory in order to be used for the big upgrades, and so they're flying across this area. Okay, that makes sense. Now I understand. I'm no longer upset and confused. Where was I? I need a thoughts about stacks. Okay, Schedule 1 is a meme game. I suppose that means maybe it'll pick up a lot of viewers if I tried playing it. I don't know. Maybe I should. It's possibly worth considering, especially if it's only about sort of 12 hours long. But I do tend to be a bit completionist about some of these things, so we'd have to see how that goes. You guys are a bit too close for comfort. I don't approve. Okay, we'll start shelling them. Fine, whatever. So where was I? Yes. So yeah, I was saying I've done all the researches. That's gone quite nicely. I've done all of the things. The last other thing that I had left to do was on the Asimov, which is making foundation by flying to basically everywhere and then picking it up. Unfortunately, I realised during my between streams. After I interrupted it going to go and get some fuel, it didn't then try and go and get more fuel, which is a bit weird. I thought it should have done. So let's stick that in there. Let's have it try and go to Norvis. The problem is, it doesn't have any uranium fuel cells. Now, we've made quite a lot of fuel here. These tanks are full, and I'm hoping that coupled with the solar panels around it, is going to be enough to keep it running until it gets back to Norvis. If we look in here, we'll probably see that. Okay, now we actually have a decent amount of power available. That's slightly surprising. Maybe I caught it just before it became a problem. That's interesting. Oh, no, I take that back. It has made it back to Norvis. Maybe it was a different ship then that had the problems. I am not sure. I poked a couple of things that were broken and might have poked them too hard and actually fixed them. Yeah, so this seems to be okay now. I mean, you could say the same sort of thing about Factorio. You could say there's no completing it. It's just you get to the point where you've completed all the obvious objectives and you're just churning through infinite science packs. And it sounds like Schedule 1 is probably vaguely similar. So that could be could be worth taking a look at. Thank you for the suggestion. Please remind me on the Discord, because otherwise I will forget. Maybe stick it in the on topic section, and I'll have a look when I'm done with the stream. Automation's all at the end. Okay, so there's quite a bit of endgame content then in setting up all of the automation. We shall see. It may be fun to take a look at. But yes, I was saying I'm planning to start playing The Last Starship as my Wednesday night stream, which allows you to. Which is basically going to be sort of this sort of thing, building up spaceships that can then fly through space and be self-sufficient and so on and so on. So I think that's going to be good fun. So please come along to all of those. It'd be great to have everyone around, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. So, but actually getting back to today's stream, because this is why we're actually here. We're here to play some Factorio Space Age, rather than talk about other games and what's going to be coming in the future. So one of the things I want to do is go around all of the planets, probably in the order that I originally went to them in, and have a look at how things were done on them, and basically talk about what I would do differently if I was going to start it again, because there are quite a few things that are a bit of a horrible mess, he says, opening up Fulgora as a prime example of this. So, when I first came to Fulgora, I set up some scrap recycling, and then I immediately discovered quality modules as a thing. And I went, ooh, we're getting basically free stuff because we're just turning this scrap into lots of things that are somewhat valuable. So you know what? Let's chuck in a bunch of quality modules into these machines and try and get some quality stuff out of it. I think in hindsight, that was probably a bit of a mistake as a step one. Because what ends up happening is you end up pumping all of your stuff through here. You end up with lots and lots of quality things in your outputs, just clogging things up, and then you have a massive system up here that is just pulverizing stuff and throwing it away, and you end up trying to decide what on earth you want to keep, and having a separate thing over here for that, and then this jams up. And I think this was in general, I think this was a bad idea. This system overall, I think, is more or less okay. but I don't think I should have put the quality systems in it for the initial production system over here. Now, for some of the end things that were being produced, like, I don't know, solar panels, for example, or no, not solar panels, accumulators. Sticking quality modules in there and then pulling out and then having some decent, slightly higher quality ones of those, sure, that I think is a good idea. That will produce some slightly better quality accumulators. They can be put in here, and that's nice to have. Having a system for doing some quality churn, perhaps that would be a good thing as well. So maybe tapping off some of the things that you got too many of, like cogs in the early stages, perhaps. I know they turn into iron, but whatever, and churning through those in quality. That, again, I can see being a useful thing to do, because that way you can get some quality parts back and you can start making yourself some better bits and pieces to put in your armour. So at the moment I have in my armour, make sure you right click, there we go, I've got some slightly better exoskeletons, I've got better armour, which is giving me the bigger equipment grid and more inventory space, I've got better roboports and so on. So some of these sort of things, they're worth making at a slightly higher quality. So that, definitely worthwhile. But having the whole thing feeding through quality modules, I think was probably a mistake. And if I was doing it again, I think I wouldn't do that. I'd have one island set up, doing processing, and then starting to producing the science. So just basically concentrating on science. Maybe I put the bus on that one as well, because it's the first island and you kind of need both. And then I expanded out. I put in this mine down here, which still has 56 million on this patch. I think this was at about 65, 70 million. So we've used 20% of it. We've used very little. That's been this island here was crazy. It had crazy amounts of it on. And then bringing that in by train, that was great. But then I think for trying to expand out more, at that point, I think I should have started branching out a bit more, so more trains going off from this island, so going for a bit of a town setup sort of thing. So perhaps having one of these islands concentrating on processing all of the scrap, and then having a train that takes away, I don't know, maybe the holmanite, the stone, all the ingredients that you need to make all the bits and pieces that go into the pink science, perhaps, and the rockets as well, and then having an island that is just pink science. Then maybe I'd have another island that is doing quality stuff, and another island that has the mall on it. And if I could find some that were close enough together, like these two down here, then maybe I'd string some power cables between them to make things a little bit easier, because this island is just literally full of accumulators. But I'm aware that that's quite difficult. I did late on in the end game phase. I did then link. By when I had foundations, I have now linked up the two robo networks between the two islands, which is nice but very much unnecessary. So yeah, I did that, but maybe I would eventually if it seemed like a good idea. But what I wanted to do really is separate things out as much as I can in a sort of a town style way between the different islands. So perhaps this one over here should have been my upgraded pink science once I realised that this is woefully inadequate. So that should have been moved off over to here. And whether I do it from scratch with the scrap recycling to produce all the resources needed, or whether I train those over from here, I don't know. But definitely one of the things that needs to be done with this factory, with my factory, if I wanted to carry on using it for longer and expand it, would be to improve the pink science productions. It's failed again. We've run out of holmium plate apparently, because over here we've run out of where am I even making? Over here, what? Oh, because over here, the box that collects better quality plate has filled up completely. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. You want to have some quality holmium, but then this goes against my previous thought. So, but one moment, I'll come back to that in a second. So let's come over here and say, actually, I'd like to bring out holmium plate, tier 3 holmium plate as well. Let's pull some of that out. That comes on to my next thought regarding quality, which is I wish that very early on I'd put in quality modules into lots of the end game stuff. So I'm going to skip planets a second over to Gleba because it's a particularly good example. A week or two ago, maybe less, I finally put quality modules in the machine down here that is making the rocket turrets, and then I started recycling some of the better ones down here into some of the tier 2 ones and some of the tier 1s to try and make some more better rocket turrets. And now I've got one tier 4 and another one tier. Oh, and I've got a tier 5 as well. So that's been quite successful in making some better rocket turrets. However, if I'd just whacked these quality modules in here as soon as I started building these rocket turrets and just known that eventually I'm going to want better turrets for a spaceship or something, then by the time I got to the point of needing them, then I'd have had a box down here that would have had probably loads and loads of tier 2s, a handful of tier 3s and a couple of tier 4s or whatever. Whatever it had, it would have been valuable and useful. And that kind of goes for a lot of the end products as well. So maybe I could have done that with the with the bulk inserters as well, the long-handled inserters as well. I could have done it with the assembly machines. I could have done it, and so on and so on. So I would have had at least the starting point of upgrading a load of my stuff just from making the normal stuff. Because on Gleba there is. There's almost 1,000 rocket turrets on Gleba that I've built, and quite a lot have been destroyed as well through just attrition from pentapods. So if I'd been, if I'd had all of those have been built with a machine that had quality modules in it, well, this one has a quality of 18%. Now I wouldn't have got that high, but let's say I'd got it up to 10%, then that would have been 100 of the next tier of tier 2 rocket turrets, 10 tier 3 and 1 tier 4 probably, and then I could have recycled some of the tier 2s to get some more tier 3s, and generally it would give me that big head start on getting the better quality things out, and that could have gone into a lot of the machines here along the mall, maybe the module production machines as well, so the speed modules, or I could have had some high quality repair packs or whatever. All of these things that are making final ingredients, I could have had it making them at a higher quality level. And potentially even over on Norvis, perhaps then maybe all of this circuit production, there should have been production at higher quality levels. However, that then loops back to the problem I was just having on Fulgora over here. And I've had this problem quite frequently, where you make so much of, in a lot of these cases, the tier 2, and then it gets onto the tier 3 quality stuff, that whatever storage you put in ends up filling up, and that jams up. And I was having the same problem repeatedly over here. So this is my storage area for random quality goods. And the problem I ran into is that these boxes would fill up. So every so often, this system would jam, and I'd have to come over here and go, okay, why is it broken this time? Oh, it's because we've got more quality batteries or more quality copper cables than we know what to do with. Firstly, why am I keeping copper cables? Actually, no, copper cables are actually useful. But then I have to go, do I put in another box? No, probably what I do at that point is I go in and go, well, okay, we've got a decent number of legendary copper cables at this point, so let's chuck away the epic copper cables. Or previously, it was more like I did that with the rare ones. I've thrown away the rare copper cables and put them back in to be recycled. And so there are ways around it, but it's a bit of a manual process where you have to wait for something to break and then go back and fix it. Or if you're a bit more organised, you go back and set up an alarm on the box and go back and then turn it off when that fails. So yeah, and also if you're not careful, you end up keeping large quantities of high quality stone bricks or stone or whatever, and you go, why am I even keeping these? What's the point? It was worse. And look over here, I've got a load of epic legendary solid fuel bricks, and there's no point in having those. They don't do anything apart from make trains go a bit faster, and I've not been using them for that, so they're just a waste of space. So yeah, maybe they should be churned through the churnometrons a bit more just to get rid of them, or sent round a different way and put into an endless loop of pulverizers. The other thing is, given the number of and then moving on from that train of thought, given the number of things you have where you are producing free stuff, some of which you don't want, and this being the top example of it, it'd be nice if there was a slightly more effective just throw things away system. So okay, the recyclers will take everything down to a 25% chance of whatever it was. So the first time you run it through, you get rid of 3/4 of it, then you get rid of 15/16 of it, and so on. So you can demolish stuff fairly quickly with a large quantity of recyclers. So it's not actually that bad, but it would feel nice if you could just chuck them into the oceans over here and get rid of them that way, like you can on Fulgora. But never mind. These are nitpicks to an extent. I think I want to talk more about what I would do differently rather than what I think the game should do differently. So yeah, that's at the top of the list, is do quality in a slightly different way. What that means I would put in these machines instead, I don't really know, because the scrap comes in such quantity that there's not been any sort of real problem with that. So meh, whatever. I don't feel the need to put productivity modules in there. the number of machines needed to fill up a blue belt isn't actually that many. Well, down here, I've got them being filled by a green belt. I've got no modules in any of these, and they're filling basically filling two green belts. So almost. Oh, they were until they ran out. Yeah. So there's no real need to speed them up anymore. So I guess I just don't use the module slots in them. That's fine too. Yeah. So after having this system on Fulgora and having it kind of working, and I mean it is shipping out the pink science, at least now that I've fixed that obvious problem that we had before. So it does kind of work. I shouldn't be too rude about it. It was also shipping out blue circuits and low density structures at one point because they were being made on this planet for free, as in they were coming out of the production, out of the scrap recycling over here, and I was hardly using any of them, so I thought let's ship them off. That caused problems with not having enough of them to keep building rockets, so that changed later, but initially it seemed like a good idea. And also, because of those things, I thought, well, in that case, let's move the yellow science over here, but that came later, actually. Let's try and be slightly more chronological. After that, I went over to Vulcanus, where I actually happen to be at the moment, which is fun. And Vulcanus is lovely because you pump lava out of the oceans over here, and then you can just and then as long as you've got some calcite, which you have, because there's massive patches on this planet. Look at this one over here. So you can see how big this patch was when I got here. This is where virtually all of my calcite has come from. Citation needed. Have I been dropping any in from space? I probably dropped a little bit in from space to start with, but basically this patch here has provided all of the calcite for all of my lava processing and all of my electricity generation, and I'd say that is probably about half used. As you can see, there's a strip down the side here where all the mining drills used it all up, and then there's a chunk missing off the bottom of here, and this part is somewhat nibbled. These ones over here don't have any power, but that's sort of irrelevant because these ones do, and they've run fast enough, and they've pulled, and they're keeping the system running. So this is a crazily large patch. It was the first one I found. This was actually in my starting area, I believe, and it's done me all the way to the end of the game. So that was really nice. Oh, I've been talking. People have been talking back, and I haven't been reading. Yes, exactly. No good. I could send the solid fuel over to the trains, but I just haven't been. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think you're right. I suspect you're right that it's that you get these quality modules and you go, hey, I want to use I want to make quality stuff. So you do, and then you realise late, sort of 20, 30, 40 hours later, maybe that wasn't the best idea. By then it's far too late, and you've already got a system, and you have to either rebuild from scratch or do something completely different. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess two recyclers feeding each other would be pretty good, as long as you don't put any low density structures into them, in which case they'd probably choke. Hello, regular, welcome. Maybe Terang, what's up? What have you? What can I maybe help you with? No promises, but you know, I'll give it a shot. Norvis is still losing bots. Oh yeah, we're having over there. That's a weird place to be losing bots, but sure. Right, while I'm waiting for the oh, it's out of range again. Where's my artillery train? Where is my artillery train? It's escaped again. There it is. What are you doing down there? That's a silly place to be. How about, oh, you're shelling all the biters over there. How about you travel up to about here, and then we'll do some manual shellings. I have no idea what several of the words you're using there mean, Terang, I'm afraid, so there is no way I'm going to be able to help you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to recommend Google. Let's say inactivity, and then let's start trying to shell stuff like that. So I want you gone, I want you gone, I want you gone, I want you gone, and you. That's fine, there'll be artillery in range in a moment, and you. And I don't know what's going on down there, but I don't like it, but I think it's probably safe. And let's get rid of some of these down here as well, because I can. That looks like a spawn right on the edge of a radar zone. Okay, that'll do. We'll let it, if it wants to shoot anything, if it can see anything else to shoot when it stops, then we'll let it shoot other things as well, but that'll do for now. Right, yeah, so, yes, quality, dangerous. Yes, you're quite right, Battle. Yes, let's get back over to Vulcanus now. I've sorted that minor issue out. So yeah, Vulcanus is essentially you get to Vulcanus and you go, wow, that is basically free metal, because these patches never run out. You can produce massive quantities of that's lava, molten iron and molten copper very, very easily with this sort of setup. You do produce rather a lot of stone though, and initially I had a bit of a problem with that, which is why there's this disposal system down here, and we're just putting the stone back into the lava, and that's the sort of thing I was talking about before, which I'd quite like to be able to do over on Fulgora. You can't, but I'd quite like to be able to. So yeah, we're chucking away the excess over there, which is fine and lovely. And yes, then we just produce massive quantities of copper and iron, and that allows you to make whatever you want, except suddenly you discover that everything you want requires tungsten. And there isn't any of that in your starting area, because you only get about this much space probably, and there's no tungsten patch in it, and I suspect that's probably a guaranteed thing. And there are some fairly unfriendly fellas outside your territory who will come over and investigate if you start trying to build anything. So I managed to deal with them, and I put in a tungsten mine down here. Yeah, you can see how dealing with them went by the detritus left over here. But I managed to find a tungsten patch and started digging that up, and so that allowed me to start making better machines like the foundries. Wait, I've got ahead of myself, because you need tungsten to make the foundries, but never mind. You know, that sort of works. So yeah, then you have the tungsten coming in, and you can start making the orange science. And this was a really, really easy one. Once you got the tungsten, orange science is, I can't find it. Orange science, here we go. It's just feed in tungsten in one shape, feed in tungsten in another shape, and feed in some molten copper, and boom, orange science packs. This was probably one of the easiest science packs to put together, particularly once. What's going on here? Oh yes, I remember. This was supposed to put a steady drain on the. Let's stop that. That's weird. Okay. Yeah, so this is very, very easy. It just required you to go out and get tungsten. So getting the tungsten was the hard part. And once you've done that, easy. You just pump that into the rockets and send it off. Lovely. Yeah, I'd say use Steam. But we've always used Steam for multiplayer, and that just works. So, actually, no, we haven't. We've just used the Factorio in-game game finder, I think. But yeah, I think Steam would probably work as well. After Vulcanus, well, then there wasn't much of a choice at that point. Then I had to go off to Gleba, and Gleba is a silly place. And I started off over on, well, I landed about here, I think, and then I thought, here's a nice area of land. Let's go and get started over here, and apparently leave a substation behind. And I built up a small, tiny area that was, well, I started off saying, well, I want metals. That's what you always need in Factorio. That's what it's for. That's how you get everything going. So I started doing the bacteria loops to get the metal ores out and start producing those. And then I went, okay, to make the actual science packs, I'm going to need to go off and get some fruity stuff. So I started off setting up the plantations to grow the Yamako and the other one, the jelly nuts, and processing those. And then I went, oh dear, I haven't really got enough space in my system to do this, so I rebuilt it. And then I went, oh dear, I haven't got enough space, so I rebuilt it again. And again. And eventually I ended up on, I think it was on this island here, with quite a lot of landfill and a bus that sort of wound round in on itself and then came back up and over here, and it was awful. So I then did a massive rebuild of Gleba. Move the pollution producers, the actual plantations, a bit further out away from the factory. That, in hindsight, isn't really enough of a gap. I should probably have put the factory down here, or the plantations up here, or something like that, or maybe over here and up here. But a little bit more space would have been nice. Because you see, if I turn the pollution monitor on, it is reaching the factory. That said, by the time it's reaching the factory, it's well within artillery range. So the factory down here has not really had any attacks. It's been okay. The attacks have all been coming in about up here, and so it's been all right. We've been able to deal with that. And essentially, to deal with that, I just put rocket turrets all the way around the entire outside the base, and that has worked very well. I did get severely glebbed once or twice, and things went very, very badly. But I learned my lesson, and then managed to produce a functioning defensive system. So it's gone kind of okay. So not too bad there. My first demolisher kill was I wouldn't go quite as far as to say underwhelming. It was a bit of an effort to kill it, but that's because I went in with lightning turrets and bullet turrets, and I didn't take a tank over. I think part of the reason I didn't take a tank with me was and uranium ammunition over was out of stubbornness, because somebody kept spoiling it, saying, "Oh, you've got to take a tank and uranium ammo over to Vulcanus to deal with the worms." And so, because I'd been spoiled on that one, that it was an easy way to do it, I quite deliberately didn't do it because it sort of felt like cheating and giving in and rewarding the people or the person who kept spoiling things. And I didn't want to do that. So yeah, that's why the first one was done with bullet and lightning turrets, and it did okay. I mean, yes, we had some losses, but they were acceptable losses given that we took out the demolisher that was coming in this way, and then liberated the patch here. Then the rest of them, well, by the time I finished off the first tungsten patch and needed to expand down to the second one, I had the railgun, and using the railgun against demolishers is comical. There's a short on my YouTube channel of me laughing about it when I first discovered how powerful they are, and it seems I don't actually have any railgun ammunition on here, or I'd be tempted to... Oh no, I do, I have one left. So let's go and have a play. Let's see if one railgun round is enough to take out the demolisher. Now it is, as long as I shoot straight, basically. So there's this bit here that's been sticking out into my territory for a while and annoying me a little bit. So let's go play hunt the demolisher. I think I saw a tail on the... No, I didn't see a tail on the radar. It's further away than I thought. Must be all the way down here, hiding in the south corners. This is actually quite a big piece of territory. Where are you? Where are... Aha, here he is. Right, so yeah, this guy, he's only a small one. The thing I do find quite amusing is that my lasers have so little effect on the demolisher that he doesn't care. They sort of tickle vaguely, warm him up a little bit, but he doesn't mind the heat. He swims through lava quite happily. But when you shoot one of them with a railgun, they basically just kind of vanish, and you go, okay, well that was slightly anticlimactic, and then you can't fly over them because he's still in the process of dying. So let's go around this way. Yeah, so that was comical and didn't do too much. It wasn't too difficult. I suppose the point is you need the demolishers to be a challenge, but you also need them to be manageable if Vulcanus is the first planet you go to. Because if you go to Vulcanus and you don't have a railgun, you don't have uranium, or maybe no, you'd have uranium ammo in theory by the time you went there, or at least you could. But yeah, they need to. Yeah, they aren't as dangerous as you sort of expect them to be when you look at them. Now, going out and shooting at them with handheld weapons normally is pretty futile and won't get you anywhere, apart from the railgun, of course. But yeah, I know what you mean. They possibly should have been a bit tougher, but then I don't know. It's a difficult balancing act. I think what they've done with having them get tougher as you get further away from the spawn is probably a good thing, TM, and would and to kind of... Oh, we don't have any ammo here. Fine. This station's not turned on yet. Why do you not work? Okay, if anything is less than 0, then okay, and then output. We're not getting in the right inputs. What are you not? What? Oh, it's still on the main robo network. That's why it's not working. Okay, so this guy down here is going to keep biting on the wall and having it repaired in front of him. I think possibly I need to. Oh, sounds like a raid. Hello, Tholan and friends. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, you've got to the point where I have essentially I'm saying that I've basically finished Space Age. So I've been going around. I'm now just going around talking about everything I've been up to, and I've been talking about Vulcanus at the moment and how scary the demolishers aren't really. So if that's spoilers to you, you might need to run away quite quickly. But yeah, so what we're saying. Yeah, even without the tank, the demolishers aren't quite as scary as maybe they need to be. So what Wooby have done, I think that makes sense, is that they've made the demolishers get harder the further away you get from the spawn. However, they don't get very much harder, and they don't get harder very, very quickly. So I don't think, for the expansion I've done here, which is, as I say, endgame, I've got a ship to the Shattered Planet, I've completed all the non-infinite sciences, all that sort of stuff. To this point, I haven't needed to fight, certainly I haven't needed to fight a large demolisher. I don't think I've had to fight a medium one either. They've been all smalls in this sort of area. So starting with small ones close by, great. But then I think you either need to be forced to push further out to go and battle bigger ones that could be maybe much tougher, to the point where you need multiple railgun turrets to deal with them, perhaps. But then the problem with that is it goes against the balance that's been very much put into Space Age, where I think they've taken on board that people don't want to have to go out and continually move mines around, because that's kind of dull. So I think that's why now, I mean, it's been a very, very long time since I've had to build a new mine anywhere on any of my planets, I think. Oh, I'm in the middle of a uranium one on Norvis. But basically, I haven't had to push out at all. So this, as we discussed earlier, this is my starting calcite patch. It's been absolutely fine. I did have to come out and get some more sulfuric acid over here, and I did have to go out to a second coal patch, and a second tungsten patch, but I haven't had to expand out all that far. So maybe forcing you to go out and play with the big demolishers somehow would have been better. But exactly how you implement that without it feeling like people are being a bit too railroaded, I don't know. I can see, basically what I'm saying is I can see how it's difficult to balance the wanting to make the demolishers a threat with wanting to make them manageable in early game, with not wanting to make you have to move your mines too often. Those three together, they don't really work together, and so I can see why they struggled a little bit. And remember, this is Factorio base game. Okay, it's Space Age, which is advanced Factorio, but it's not meant to be as advanced as, say, Space Exploration or Pionodons or Crastorio or any of the big overhaul mods. It's still meant to be relatively approachable for the I'm not going to say beginner Factorio player, but someone who has only played maybe a few hundred hours of it. I can imagine. Yes, having demolishers on Norvis early on would be absolutely horrifying. Hopefully, you get a decent safe area to start with first before you break out into their territories. But yeesh, yes, that does sound absolutely horrifying, having to deal with demolishers before you've actually left the planet and got the exciting space tech. You're quite right, Trunk. You won't have railgun ammo until you've been to Aquilo. That's spot on. So, well, yeah. What I was saying is you want them to be. You want the small ones to be challenging with stuff you bring from Norvis. You want the mediums to be very hard, maybe borderline impossible, with the stuff you can bring from Norvis, and therefore make you have to have been to Gleba to get rocket turrets, or been to Aquilo to get railguns, or both, and then maybe make the big ones just unmanageable without multiple railguns or something like that. It's a very difficult balancing act. I certainly don't have the answers, but I do agree that it meant the demolishers were a little bit underwhelming. Particularly, I was going to say particularly when I got the railgun, but then that's not entirely fair. The railgun was end game tech, so when you get end game tech, you should feel massively overpowerful and just be able to blitz through everything. That's the point of end game tech. But on the flip side, I didn't have any serious challenges with the demolishers, because I only needed to fight one or two of them before I got to practically the end game tech. So that's sort of it's just tricky. Max damage threshold. That's an interesting idea. So yeah, so if you hit them with one shot that does 10,000 damage, it can only do a maximum of 1,000 damage or 2,000 damage or whatever. Yeah, that would be possible. Burst damage, that's sort of the point. That even with the rail, even the larger ones, I believe, with the railgun, are still not actually a threat, because I see your point, Hernheim. Yeah. Yeah, so do you want to push the Factorio player out? Do you need to push the Factorio player to go further when they'll tend to go on to massive science per minute numbers? I think you probably still do. Because firstly, Space Age sort of pushes against the just going out and making massive bases, because there's so many more things to do. Now, okay, granted, there are going to be people out there who are going to play this on 100 times science cost, who are going to try and make a million science per minute mega base in Space Age. Sure, those people exist, but at the moment, I think my computer is only capable of running this game at about double normal speed. So if I tried to go on to that sort of level of size, I'd probably really the computer would start to struggle, I think. I'm still losing bots on Norvis. Oh no, it's there now that biter has finally got through. I should probably do something about that guy. Let's call the train over. Get some ammunition in here and stop that guy just eating all of my turrets. Anyway, yeah, so in Factorio 1.1, it was easy enough. It was relatively easy to finish the base game, launch the rocket, and so you're done. And then from there, it's, again, relatively easy to expand out to the point. That's not going to go. It's going to go here. Go here first. It's relatively. Then the next thing to do is to expand out to try and start doing the infinite sciences faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And so that's how you end up with the classic Factorio mega base. It's pulling in enormous amounts of iron and copper, making and oil, uranium, making enormous quantities of science packs, and you get people aiming for thousands of science per second or whatever the current well, whatever the top end of the mega base thing was. Sure, that is certainly a good way to play Factorio. People like doing that. Fine. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to say you shouldn't. However, with what I think I noticed was when we played space exploration was that there are so many science packs that you tend not to get that sort of thing, and it takes a very, very long time to get to the end game. With K2SE, it took 200 hours of 4 people playing to get to the end game, and at that point, our computers were running the game at half speed, which is one of the problems. And also, we didn't really then want to go out and try and make the Deep Space Science 4 at 1,000 per minute, because that would have been horrifying. We were making them at, I don't know, I think we were making them at about 10 per minute or something like that. It was a reasonable rate. It meant we got through sciences without too much difficulty. But it wasn't sort of the crazy levels that you would see in a vanilla game. Jeez, this is... Why has he got up here? Why is he attacking that turret? I don't entirely understand, but never mind. We'll deal with him fairly quickly. So yes, so it's a very different feel, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Why are you flashing? Oh, your signals. It's a very different feel with a much larger game mods where you don't end up going for the mass production of science, or at least I don't. Instead, you end up going for producing, just trying to get all the way to the end. So it's width rather than depth. You have an enormously wide number of science packs instead of having 7 of them that you try and make in absolutely crazy quantities. This is going badly. What idiot did this? Right. Can we have some turrets over here as well? Those won't work. I mean, it's not too serious a problem. The biters will eventually wear themselves out, as long as they don't attack the train. That's all I really care about. There we go. Now they've come in range, so they're just getting shot. Those guys are sitting up there like lemons. Okay, well, we have some turrets over here that will distract them, and then when they come over to attack it, they'll get generally wrecked. So I think this is... I'm not going to say it's well defended, but it's gonna cope. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so I don't see Endgame Factorio challenge as Endgame Factorio making mega bases in quite the same way as it used to be. Now, sure, there will be people who do end up making massive factories, but I think it's going to be less common. This is all terrible, but never mind. I don't care about any of this, apart from the fact it's making upsetting noises. So yes, that means that circling back to Vulcanus, that means that what I was talking about earlier is in the sort of the early mid game, you need to try and push. This is horrible. Could we not, please? What idiot set this up? I know it was me. This idiot. Let's just remove that section of the factory. Oops, I didn't mean to remove the trees. That's unnecessary. Let's do that. Calm things down a little bit. Or we could just wait for the biters to eat them all, I suppose. That works too. As soon as they come anywhere near here, they'll hopefully get wrecked by the turrets like that. There we go. Yeah, we'll finish this off slightly more sensibly in never. So, yeah, that comes back to the previous thing I was saying, which is over on Vulcanus. You need to encourage early or mid-game people to go out and discover a few more of the demolishers. Except that doesn't happen because they don't need to. They get their first tungsten patch, and that'll keep them going to mid-game, and then they get the second tungsten patch, and that keeps them going till end-game, in my experience. So, it sort of doesn't matter. Could you just hurry up and destroy these turrets so we can get on with killing you guys, and I can stop getting alerts, please? Oh, they're outside the robo range, so they're not going to get demolished. Never mind then. You know what? I wish I could turn these alerts off when this thing happens, but no. Anyway, yeah. So Fulgora, yeah, no, Vulcanus demolishers, but they're a bit sort of uncertain what sort of type of threat they're supposed to be. So it's a little bit weird. Doesn't work quite as nicely as I would possibly like it to. Yeah, that is quite appropriate, isn't it, Nogard? Yes, the biters are eating up Norvis while I talk about it. I mean, they're not going to get to anything important, which is why I partly care so little because, well, they're not going to eat anything important because, well, they've got these walls around the areas that might be important. I'm losing a few bots as they come over and try and do stuff over here, which is a shame. But you know what, the artillery train should deal with that. It's not, but it should. So let's tell you to go to manual for the moment. And then let's do some shelling to try and protect my lovely bots. So it's run out of our ammo. That's why it's that was why it was trying to head back to supply. Okay, then off you go. Yeah. So Vulcanus, it's a weird sort of. I feel like there were some various conflicting ideas for the developers, and that's why the demolishers are a bit of a sort of a. They're absolutely terrifying when you first see them. But they're a bit of they aren't actually that dangerous in the long run. So then, yes, Gleba. We're talking about the pollution things. Then I built up my what I'm probably calling Gleba 5 or something like that. So my design for Gleba has always been feed the fruit in at the top, and then have a fast belt taking the pulps as quickly as possible through the factory so that it doesn't go off too much before you make science out of it. So it's being fed down here where it's being made into the bioflux, a bit of nutrient, and then straight into the science production, and then sending the science away by rocket as quickly as we possibly can. And that's basically been my design for the whole time I've been playing. I've just made it bigger and bigger and bigger as the science requirements have expanded. So the idea of this is that if you keep constantly making the fruit pulps, bringing it in, pulping it, sending it through, making everything as quickly as you can, then you get decently fresh science being shipped through, and you can see that's kind of working. It's at 80% in the rocket, 80 to 85% in the rocket, and that's not bad. The problem with that is you then get an awful lot of other stuff just sort of clogging your belts up afterwards, and when you've got more of it than you really know what to do with, and it's just a bit, yeah. So you end up with a very difficult balancing act. You either don't make enough of the fruit pulps, and then possibly your science starves, but certainly your stuff after that starves, where you're making your metals and things, which you're probably going to need at least a bit of. Or you make loads of it, and you end up with a load of the pulps just sitting on the belt like this, gradually going off. And if that then backs up into your science area, that's going to cause you problems because you're going to end up with much less fresh science coming through. So you need to keep it flowing through, but also keep it. You need to keep it moving to keep it fresh, but also not get too much of it. And then so you end up burning a lot of stuff off, and then you have the bioflux where you have the same problem again. So again, if you're making science out of it, you need the bioflux to be fresh because that's what determines how fresh your science pack is. The bioflux and the egg freshness, and the egg freshness I believe is determined by the nutrient freshness that you're feeding in as well. So you want all of that to be as fresh as possible to get you the best science packs you can. But then down here, you need something to deal with all of that extra bioflux that's coming through because you don't want that. Yeah. So what I've done here is I've got the bioflux just flowing around a loop underneath. So there's all to make sure it just goes. To make sure it gets used up, ideally before it goes off. So we've got lots of it being fed down to all these machines that use loads of bioflux. Meanwhile, and then I'll make more of it when there's a shortage on that belt, which means we're feeding any overflow from the science in by priority, and then making more of it from a secondary feed of fruit pulp coming in from over here. And so all the stuff down here, I don't care about the freshness of it because it's all making dry ingredients, things like belts and stuff that don't spoil. So that's all fine, but you need to keep it fresh for the science. So that's an interesting balancing act, of which I feel I've sort of half achieved and not very well. If I was going to do this again, right, so I would do things differently if I did this again. What I would have is I'd have basically the same system for producing the science packs, because I think this is pretty good. We've got the pulp coming through and the bioflux coming through as fresh as is reasonably possible under the circumstances. We're making nutrients out of it pretty close to where they're needed. This is all quite good, I think. It's the stuff afterwards that's a bit of a mess. And what I think I should have done is set up stations scattered around the set up towns scattered around the planet, because Gleba is actually quite easy to expand on. All of the enemies out here are a bit of a pushover if you're going out and just hitting them manually by yourself. If you've got a flying suit with a load of lasers and a rocket launcher, it's quite easy to blast your way through almost any number of the Glebians, because they're not actually that tough when you take the fight to them. It's when they take the fight to you and you're not really ready for it, that's when they really screw you over. So yeah, expanding out wouldn't have been too difficult. I could have gone out, built up a load of towns, and had the fruit coming in from plantations all up in the north here, and then towns down the bottom. And then each one would have had a town for, say, let's look for example, a town for iron, for example. And that would have brought in a quantity of both the fruit types, because you need them for the to make the bioflux, and then it would have turned all of that fruit into bioflux and turned it, and then run it through iron production systems like this, made a massive quantity of iron ore, and then shut down and stopped asking for fruit. Then the iron ore would get gradually used up from that system, and then when it ran out, it would call for a load more fruit, and it would do it again. And that would allow you to and that would mean that you get fruit brought in, you'd use it quickly while it was there and available, and then you'd shut the system down and stop calling for it, and you wouldn't have to be piping it through absolutely everything like I'm doing here. And that'd be much nicer. And then you'd have the same thing for plastic as well. Maybe plastic. You'd have the same thing for copper as well. Maybe have it exactly the same in the same area with the same fruit supply coming in. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. And then probably having done that, you'd then do all of the copper and iron processing on site as well, just because why not? At least to the stage where you've got the molten iron and copper. There's a rocket launching. That's quite loud. Then you'd have done the same sort of thing for carbon fibre. Actually, that just requires carbon and spoilage, so maybe I'd have had a spoilage train come in. Hang on, what? No, it doesn't. It requires carbon and Yamako mash. So you bring in the Yamako, and also, you need to bring in both fruit types there to get the bioflux to power it. So maybe I'd have a central bioflux production system as well. I don't know. At that point, it gets. Hang on, no, you don't. Don't need bioflux. Yes, you do. You need bioflux to make the nutrients to power the machine. Unless you do it all from scrap, but that's very, very slow and wasteful, so I don't think that would work. I don't mean scrap, I mean spoilage. So yeah, again, you bring both of those in, or perhaps you'd have a central bioflux production system where it just chucks it out to places where it doesn't have to be too fresh. And then so on and so on and so on. And then by the time you get on to making things like rockets and belts and your bus, all of that would be being done by a very traditional town system that would bring in the blue circuits and the carbon fibre and so on. The one fly in the ointment for all of this is making the stack inserters, because that does require jelly. I'm not sure exactly how I would do that. I'd have to think about it a bit more. But basically, all of that would be fine. I just want to split off all of these different sub processes off to having their own towns, so that you're not trying to feed this stupidly long belt of fruit pulp past all of them and then just leaving it sitting on the belt to decay. I'd rather ship in a load of fruit, pulp it where it's needed, and then use all of it up, and then have the factory go idle and not have any fruit in it until it empties, or until it gets below a point where another train load would allow it to. Or rather, call another train in when it's got to the point that it can use up another train load, basically is what I'm trying to say. And then, run until that's all used up and then go back to sleep again. So that would be better, and is how I would do Gleba if I was starting it now. The end game is producing legendary everything. You could. I'm not going to. But you could, make at least one make one legendary of every single item in the thing. Good luck with that. I suspect quite a lot of that will come from sort of endlessly recycling wood, trying to roll slightly better versions of it out of a recycler, for example, and fish as well in the same sort of way. Although they spoil now, don't they? So that's fun. So that's how I do Gleba differently. Then, Aquilo is the next planet. Let's go and have a look over here. Is it impossible to get a legendary pistol, or you just have to die an enormous number of times? You can make a pistol. No, you can't make a pistol. It's just hit. It has no ingredients, so you can't make a pistol. You just have to die enough times to make enough pistols to upcycle them. I know people are good at that. Right, Aquilo. I think Aquilo, I wouldn't do all that differently. I'd have a bit less spaghetti in the middle. If I knew what I was getting into when I started on it, I'd probably have designed some of the factory a bit differently. But in general, I'm reasonably happy with this. This tower of construction coming off here for the science packs, that's pretty good. Off to the side here, we've got a nice expanded area of making all of the quantum processors. Same over here for the lithium processes, and it's being piped through. There is a lot of spaghetti on this planet, but I think that's just how Aquilo is. I suspect you probably can't not have a spaghetti Aquilo, because it's just... Because with all the having to get the heat pipes everywhere, you can't just spread out and run long belts across to make it to keep things open up. Maybe a bit more of a township would work here. Perhaps bringing some of the resources that are being brought in from the cargo landing pads to make the various things along here. Maybe those could be brought in by brought out by train in a slightly more elegant way, and have a separate island that does that one, and the lithium. And the science packs and power generation, all of these could be done separately. Would that be a good idea? Probably not. I think this is reasonably good. It is spaghetti, and if I built it again, or if I built it more carefully with more thought, then perhaps it would be less spaghetti. But I'm not ashamed of it in the same way that I'm ashamed is too strong a word. I'm not horrified by it and thinking, yes, I would do this completely differently. Like I am with some of my other builds. So, Fulgora, this I would do completely differently. I'd do a proper bus here for one thing, and maybe try and find a slightly bigger island to start on. I'd do my quality processing slightly differently over here, as I said before. It probably, in fact, my Fulgora would probably be more like this Fulgoran island instead of the other one, except making the pink science instead of this one. Thanks to the resub, Sophia. Hello, and 30 months. Nice. That's a long time. That's enough time to play a full game of K2SE and a little bit more. Yes. In fact, that probably is. That's probably about K2SE plus Space Age, isn't it? Nice. Thank you very much. I would assume that recycling a pistol would get you a 25% chance of a pistol back, with a N% chance of it getting upgraded based on what quality modules you had in. But I don't know. Okay, so maybe Aquilo is not bound to end up as spaghetti. Maybe it's only bound to end up as spaghetti if I build it. I could believe that, to be honest. I will admit to somewhat... I guess it's because of the way it grew. This is organised Aquilo for me. It's copy pasted, and yeah, that I'd say is quite neat. A spaghetti hat, yeah. Sounds messy. And then up here, again, reasonably neat. And this bit, yeah. The bits where I've been able to go in and go, right, I will design this carefully and then make multiple copies of it. Those have come out, they're not too bad. This bit looks a bit hectic and frantic. And to be honest, it probably is. I don't know if I can defend this quite so well. But yeah, maybe you could make a neater Aquilo with your pipes and undergrounds. I'm sure it's possible. But so I think one thing I will say about having played through Space Age is every planet brought a new mechanic that I needed to deal with. And I certainly don't say that as a bad thing. That has been an absolutely fantastic thing, and has been one of the best things about playing the game, is going through and finding new ways to play Factorio, essentially. And that has been wonderful. It's been absolutely amazing. I've really liked it. And so that has meant that every time I go out to a new planet, I'm kind of a noob again. And that means I'll build up something. Like in here, there was a sort of tangled system that was producing... Yeah, it's still here, actually. Producing the solid fuel bricks and chucking them into the burners. And then I needed to expand out my ammonia production up here. It is ammonia, isn't it? Yes, it is. So that sort of got squeezed in how I could. And then there's been various belts crammed through wherever they'll go. There's a steel belt coming out here, coming around this way in order to allow me to make... barrels in order to ship the coolant out and that sort of thing. So it's and all of the planets have had an element of spaghetti like this because I've been going, I don't understand how this planet works yet, so I'm going to start building, and then, oh, I've learnt something new, so I need to cobble that onto the side somehow, and then, oh, I've learnt something else new, so that needs to be cobbled in, and so on. So it's grown a lot more organically and with a lot less planning than a typical a Factorio base would for me. That said, my Norvis base is a bit of a... Well, actually, no, the bus is fine. The bus is standard. I have no problems with the bus. My towns are largely okay. This is a perfectly good mining and smelting patch. This is a design I'm quite perfectly happy with. This is a good town-based design. My railways were a mess until I got cliff explosives, but that's again fairly normal. With hindsight, I'd probably maybe I should go in and sort this out a bit more nicely, but I haven't needed to. It's there, it works, and anywhere I've expanded since I got cliff explosives is done nice and neatly like this. The only place that I think Norvis is a bit nasty is this area in here, going from the train drop-offs into the bus. That's a bit tangled, and it's not helped by the fact I decided it'd be a good idea to put brick processing and apparently concrete production in over here as well. And there's a green circuit production factory here that is apparently still... Oh, no, it's not still running. It's just I've used that as the input. So, yeah, this area here, I'm not so happy with. This probably could do with being redone a bit more nicely. And what I should probably have... part of the problem was the spaceship, the crashed spaceship was in the middle here, and I decided not to pick it up in the early game, and so that meant it just got left here forever, because having left it there, I didn't want to not leave it there. Hat. Right. Here's one. That's handy. It's actually in reach. So yeah, having done that, it meant there was a bit of a shortage of space over here where the train should be. So, but in hindsight, what I should probably do is have my drop-offs for the bus coming off this rail down here, and have a tall stack of stations coming up this way, and then all of the belts coming out in a sort of in a bus from the stations, and then linking into the bus up here. There would probably end up being a bit of crossover going on, like this concrete belt coming through here, or the uranium belt having to drop down underneath there, and that sort of thing, because things aren't necessarily in quite the right order. But having pulled most of the science packs off the bus, perhaps what I should be doing here is having a town somewhere that makes purple science, and maybe a town makes... Is there anything else that's still being made on the bus? Not really. There's belts, sure. Ammunition from there isn't really being used. None of these are being used, I don't think. These are all being done by the Abomination. No, most of these are being done by the Abomination now. So, pretty much all of the bus is a bit superfluous. I'm making bots on the bus. Fine. I wonder if the Abomination could do bots. That'd be a bit slow. Most of this stuff, though, point being, most of this isn't actually needed to be on... I don't really need a bus anymore. Most of it is just feeding to the Abomination, the purple science, and a few places where I'm making little things like the train stuff. So the bus was great, served me really nicely at the start of the game. It's now not so necessary. I just need to unload the rocket landing pad into the science labs, and that's about it. So yeah, some redesigns could be done around this. I don't particularly feel the need to at the moment, but those are things that could be done differently and potentially better. So the interesting thing is, I tend to find in 1.1, I find when I play Factorio, I start off with my starting ore patches. I have the smelting next to those, and then from that smelting, I then start my bus. That runs until the starting ore patches run out, when I then bring more ore in by train. That runs until the starting smelters can't keep up, at which point I then move off on and have a separate external smelting system like this one was. It still is, it's just not in use anymore. I will end up moving off the red, green, and eventually the blue circuit production off into their own factory, into their own sub-factories, like this one over here, for example. This is a bit different from the way I'd have done it in the past, because we've got foundries and EM plants, so the rules are different, but still, it's the same sort of general idea. I've got a town that's producing red and green circuits in massive quantities. They can be taken to wherever they're needed. Then I would start to move the science pack production off the bus. So the red science, the green science, blue science, all of those, they'd all be moved off to their own separate towns, where they'd then be made they'd be fed by the trains that come from the smelteries and the circuit productions. The trains would bring those things out, deliver them to wherever they're needed. They'd make the science there, and then ship it by train to my science area. Now, I've kind of done that, but the big difference is that instead of moving most of the sciences off to their own towns, I've moved them off to other planets. So Vulcanus was the obvious one. Over here, we've got essentially free iron and copper that never runs out and can be made in silly quantities. Red science is just iron and copper. Well, technically it's iron gears, but they're made from iron. So there's only iron and copper as far as raw resources go into making the red science. So I've made a massive quantity of those. Hey, past paper. So on Twitch, I have options. I have various. There are channel points that can be redeemed for various rewards. Some of which are telling me to check my posture or have a drink. One of them is to put a hat on. So Sophia redeemed some points for a hat challenge or a hat requirement 7 minutes ago. So I put a hat on. So, yes, I'm producing large quantities of the red science here, and similarly, the green science is also just iron and copper. Okay, you have to process it a few times to turn it into green circuits and inserters and cogs and belts and so on, but it is just iron and copper processed a number of times over. So that was, again, a no-brainer to put it onto Vulcanus. The next one was grey science. So that seemed like a good idea to put it onto Vulcanus, and I still think it is. It's a little bit more complex though, because it requires stone in quite large quantities to make all of the walls you need. Now stone, but you do have plenty of stone on this planet because it's produced by when you make the metals. However, when I wasn't making the other science packs quite as quickly, I did find that I wasn't producing quite enough stone, so I had to get slightly creative with ways of using up a bit more of the metals. But that was okay. It worked well enough, and now it's running quite well. The other thing though that you need to go into the military science is coal in order to make the grenades, and you do get coal on Vulcanus, but you don't get an infinite supply of it in the same way you do the iron and the copper. So I used to have a coal patch in here. You can see a little bit left over here under the edge of the bus. I managed to rip all of that up and churn through it all in the interest of making science and other things. And so I then had to go off to another coal patch, but this one's 12 million, and I'm using the big mining drills, and I've got a drill productivity of plus 240%. So actually, this means this patch is instead of being 12 million, this is 42 million, 89. This is not actually equivalent. I'm going to be able to get 92 million coal out of this patch, which is frankly ridiculous. But I'm I'm not going to complain. But this comes down to what I was saying earlier about not having to move your drills around very much, not having to set up new mines very often, because the patches go so far. You can get so much out of them that I'm not going to need to move that. So yeah, mining productivity is currently at oh, this is the wrong place to look, but I'll check the number here just to make sure it's the same. 240%, and I'm on. I've done 240, get 10% with each one. So I've done the first 24 mining productivities, and to be honest, compared to everything else, they're still really cheap. I'm counting anything under 100,000 science packs as being pretty cheap at this point, because if we look at stronger explosives, that's 1 million science packs. That's a lot. I'm not going to do that one because it would take forever. But I can chug through a few of these. So I was able to move the grey science off to here. Then I thought, well, let's carry on with that. Where else can I take things? So I thought, well, blue science is basically plastic and a few and the mundane resources. Well, I've got quite a lot of plastic available on Gleba because you can turn fruit into plastic, apparently, like this. So I've got a plastic production system. These machines here are enough to then allow me to make the red circuits here, which then get fed down here to my blue science production. We've also got sulfur on this planet. That's the other thing you need. So blue science is the go and sort out your oil production science, at least when you're on Norvis. So you need oil production in order to get the petroleum gas, to get the sulfur. You need it to get the plastic, to get the red circuits. So blue science forces you to go out and do oil. On Gleba, it's a bit different. You get the where do you get sulfur from? I can't remember. There is some weird biological process that produces sulfur. Up here we go. It is you turn spoilage and bioflux into sulfur. fine, whatever. Point being, you can get it on this planet, and that means I can make, and also you can get iron and copper from the bacteria, and so that means I'm able to make blue science, and so that's trickling through along here. There's a decent rate of it coming in, and as you can see, we've got a box and a half of it up here. That's going quite nicely. That's fine. This here is, I expanded this last week, or possibly last stream. This is my blue science production. It's fairly big. It's not very moduled. It probably should be, but yeah, that's making all of my blue science and doing it plenty fast enough. Actually, this stuff at the bottom here hasn't kicked in because somebody forgot to put this belt in. I don't know who would do a thing like that. Are you meant to be iron as well? Yes, you are. So we need to put in another splitter there, another underground there, and belts there. Okay, so that'll allow this extra thing of blue science to kick in. Not that it's actually needed at the moment. As you saw before, we currently have a plentiful supply of blue science. There's a box and a half of it. It's not a problem. But you know what? I built this. I want to see it running. So yeah, that's going to add another 50%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, another 50% onto my blue science production. So, you know, lovely. So that was blue science. Purple science is an absolute sod. Let's have a look. Purple science requires rail and electric furnaces and productivity modules. Productivity modules are fine. Those are just green and red circuits. Fine. We're making those on all of the planets because they're just metal and a bit of plastic. They're not too difficult. Rail requires stone and steel, and electric furnaces require stone bricks. So at that point, I went almost in almost those exact words, and that's why that one has been left running on Norvis. Now at this stage of the game, I reckon my system over on Vulcanus could quite happily produce this. We're now shipping in plastic from Gleba to Vulcanus to allow it to make the circuits to allow it to launch rockets at the rate it needs to launch them at, because wow, it needs to launch a lot of rockets. So now I think Vulcanus would be a sensible place to move the purple science off to, as long as it manages to keep up with enough stone. And I have to admit, I'm slightly dubious about that. I don't know. If Vulcanus started producing purple science at the rate we need to produce purple science at, I don't know. I don't know if we'd be able to produce enough stone for that. Given that it was struggling a little bit with military science, and purple science is used for everything. So looking down here, you can see purple goes into virtually every research. It's not needed for that one, or that. It's not needed for some of the military ones. But then I've done most of the military ones I need to. It's needed for that. No, not that one. That one. Not that one. So yeah, basically anything but military science, you need purple science for. And so I'd be getting through enormous quantities of it. Whereas the grey, you don't get through in quite the same quantities, because most of the researches I end up doing tend to be, some are military, some are not military. So I'm only using it half the time, or some of the time anyway. So it gives it a load of time to catch up. But potentially moving purple science production off to Vulcanus would be an option. At that point, it'd be quite nice to move the labs off to Vulcanus as well, because I'd be producing most of the science packs there, with the exception of the agricultural ones. Actually, if I could, I'd put these labs on Gleba just to make sure they always had a supply of fresh science packs going in. But unfortunately, the bio labs can only be used on Norvis, and the double effectiveness or 50% science pack drain that you get from using bio labs as opposed to traditional labs is worth the effort of having to bring the agricultural packs from Gleba to Norvis. So yeah, we're not going to be changing that. I'm quite pleased with the sushi belt. This is the most science you can get out of a sushi belt, because we're feeding in all of the science packs in theoretically even quantities, and this is a solid belt of science going in, and there are more machines than we need. However, it does come into its own when we start doing research productivities. Because if you look here, this one, the low density structure productivity, is a 60-second research. These ones are 120-second researches, and that means it takes twice. Means it takes twice as long. Well done, Laurence. Point out the obvious. That means you can effectively, for the same input quantity of science packs, you can do twice as many labs. And so, actually, overbuilding on the labs here was secretly a good thing. But don't tell anyone. But yeah, don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone it was a mistake. It was entirely deliberate, so I could get up to keep my 7,000-ish science per minute, even when I'm doing the difficult researches. Yeah, so purple science. Now maybe I would consider moving over to Vulcanus as well, because stone and plastic. Well, I've got both of those on Vulcanus. Or, you know, I could just keep doing them on Norvis, because you might as well do something on Norvis other than just drop science on it and then call that good. What else? What's next? So then, yes, the next one is, that was the wrong button. That was the right button. The next one after yellow science, no, purple science is yellow science. And I thought, right, well, where do I have these things? Blue circuits and low density structures. Oh yeah, we're making those in crazy quantities over on Fulgora, aren't we? Because when you pulverize scrap, you get, I don't know if you can see them in here, you can't, but take my word for it, you get a certain quantity of blue circuits. There you go, there's a blue circuit, and some point we'll see a low density structure come out. You get low density structures out as well, so you get those two things come out when you recycle scrap. And at that point, when I made this decision, I had plenty of blue circuits and plenty of low density structures on this planet. So I thought, yeah, no brainer. All right, in that case, let's set up a new factory down here with a load of new pulverizers that will be bringing in the scrap and turning it into blue circuits and low density structures and some other stuff besides. And we'll be able to use, we'll be able to use the cogs in order to make some iron, in order to make the pipes and the yada yada yadas, in order to make the motors to put into the flying robot frames and so on. Shouldn't be too hard. It's just iron and stuff. And so I let that run for a while, and then my demands on science went up and up, as they do, as I started to try and make things faster and faster. And well, as you can see, now there's not enough low density structures coming through to keep all of the yellow science machines running. And that has been the story of this factory, basically. There's enough coming down here to make some rockets. But so over here, I've got a system making low-density structures. And this is now using copper that's made from recycling red circuits up here. We're bringing copper ore in from space like that, and then smelting it in these smeltomatrons. We're bringing in copper plates from any spaceship that happens to be in an orbit. Yeah, so I'm making a large quantity of low-density structures. But it's still just not enough. So that crazy quantity of low-density structures I thought I had, turns out, no, not so much. Not as many as I thought there were. So this, making the yellow science on Fulgora, I mean, for a while it seemed like a good idea, and it worked for a while without too much difficulty. But now it's got to the point where I've got fed up of trying to find ways to expand it, trying to bring more copper in or more plastic or whatever it is, because it keeps failing in different ways as well. So for quite a long time it was the copper that was a problem. Then I increased that by bringing it in from space, and it eventually stopped being a problem. Then the plastic became a problem, so I increased the amount of that I was making. But that required me to start bringing in carbon from space, because you don't get you do get oil on this planet. Oh, you don't get coal, so you need to do the coal synthesis recipe, and that requires carbon. So it's like dropping carbon in from space to make the coal. The plastic is at least as easy, because we've got infinite lakes of heavy oil over here, which you can then just crack down and turn into petroleum gas to turn into plastic. So that part at least wasn't too bad. But yeah, it's still been a problem. And then we had not enough green circuits in order to make enough blue circuits, and it was a whole thing. It was an endless sort of loop of problems, and it's not been quite as good as I thought it would have been. So looking back on this, what should I have done? How should I have done this? And I'm tempted to say the answer to this might have been put this one on Vulcanus as well, because, well, let's have a look at what goes into this. We're making pipes and engines. That's all metal. That's all made from iron. Nothing else needed there. Then over here we're making those into electric engines, which requires iron, and copper. Then you do need some lube, so that would have to be got from coal synthesis. So that's a bit of a shame. The lube is the one place where that's not quite so ideal. But that would make the electric engines. Those then come over here. Batteries, then we're talking about more oil as well for the batteries, though, to make the sulfur. And you could drop some of that from space, but I don't like dropping things from space for the mass builds, because you end up with a platform like this, or maybe a bigger version of this, that is trying to just gather in resources from space. But when you're just sitting over a planet, you don't really get that much brought in. So again, not great. So where would you go? Do you go to Vulcanus and put up with the fact that you need to have lots and lots of oil processing, or do you go to Gleba? Maybe Gleba, because you've got plenty of iron on Gleba because of the bacteria processing. You've got that means you've got the circuits, the lube. I don't know how you make. Oh yeah, you can make lube on Gleba out of fruit. That's easy, pretty easy. So that's all of that's the motors and the the circuits and the steel. The batteries would be a bit of a faff. But you've got iron and copper and sulfur, and and loads of water. So yeah, I think Gleba might be the right place to make the yellow science in hindsight. So yeah, next time Fulgora will probably just make the pink science. Gleba can make the blue, the agricultural, and the yellow. That seems to be a possibility with no downsides. Yeah, that seems like quite a good improvement to me. Maybe next time. Oh, that's the other possibility. Yes, yellow science. If I imported the low density structures, yes, I could bring low density structures over from Fulgora. No, from Vulcanus. Yeah, potentially. Yes, they could just be dropped in en masse. I could have a ship bring them over in their thousands, dropping them off here. It's a lot of ships launching the low density structures, but then Vulcanus is now at the point where, of all my planets, it is the one that is capable of chucking ships out fastest. I think because the low density structures that all the bits and pieces that go into the into those ships, it's all either iron and copper, except for the ore plastic, and I'm importing plastic from Gleba. So as long as the plastic import was fast enough, then yes, we could probably out export low density structures as well. In fact, the system is set up to export low density structures from here if I need them to. So yes, potentially having a ship flying them from Vulcanus over to Fulgora, and yeah, it could take the blue circuits as well. Yeah, that would probably solve the problem, and you could then put them in as a slightly lower priority than the stuff that's coming out of the recycling. And then you're taking advantage. But then, is there any advantage to doing the rest of it over on Fulgora? If then at that point you've got your low density structures and your blue circuits coming in from other planets. That's fine. You've got an infinite supply of those. So there's just the flying robot frames that you're making locally, and sure, that can be done, and it's quite handy having the lube coming from here. But I don't think there's any real benefit. I think at that point you'd have a lot of infrastructure and you'd just be throwing away nearly everything it produced. Yeah, I don't think it's really worth it. Unless you considered it to be tapping off some of the excess of whatever you're not. If you then put quality modules in up here and just reckon that anything that didn't get siphoned off by this system, you'd be trying to bump up the quality of or something like that. Yes, the lube is free on Fulgora. So, and very, very easy. But I'm not sure the rest of it makes it worthwhile, because you need all of the infrastructure for the scrap crushing and then the scrap product disposal over here. So, although that said, you're going to already have that because you're going to need to be making pink science. So perhaps you could see making the flying robot frames for the yellow science as just a way of using up the overflow from making the pink science. You'd be fighting over batteries, though. Batteries would probably be your limiting factor on that, I think, because you need them for the pink science. And batteries have been a problem quite a lot with both the pink science and I think with the yellow science down here. Yeah, you can see that the batteries they're keeping up, but only just. And up here, I have traditionally had problems with the battery supply coming through to make all of these things. So, I like the idea of disposing of some of the excess products there. But then you'd also have potentially some excess iron and copper, and you could turn the heavy oil into sulfur to make more batteries that way, and it'd be something to do with some of the ice. I don't know. I mean, I think this is the interesting thing we've hit on the interesting thing about Factorio here, which is there's always another way you could do something. And I think with Space Age, that's even more the case. I don't think there's a single obvious right answer for the yellow science. So for some of the other ones, red and green, Vulcanus is the absolute obvious answer. There's no point in doing those anywhere else. I mean, you could do them anywhere, but it'd be silly. Blue science, I think Gleba was the sensible choice for it. I think a lot of people are rationally afraid of Gleba. and so didn't like. And so people made. There were a lot of jokes made when I said I was going to move my blue science production over to Gleba. But now that I've got Gleba to the point where I feel it's safe, and this is safe, I do occasionally lose little bits of the occasional rocket turret around the edge, but that's just I'm treating those as like ammunition basically. The factory is safe on Gleba. The worst that ever happens is we get something jams up and we get a load of eggs hatching up here, but then these turrets manage to deal with those when only a couple of things have been destroyed. So it's not too Gleba is not in danger. So then it's just, can you keep your Gleba factory running well enough to produce the iron and the copper and the sulfur and the everything else you need in order to make the blue sciences? And mostly the answer is yes. I do. If I want somebody to produce a mod that is days since last glebbing, or glebing, where you just have a counter up there along with your game time. You have a day since last glebed, and when Gleba breaks, you go over and you reset it, and you go, oh, because there are many ways you can get glebed, and they're all incredibly annoying. But anyway, despite all of that, I think producing the blue science over here probably was a sensible thing to do. Yeah, exactly, past paper. Downside is definitely the batteries. Yeah, the other thing is, yes, is just ship more of the resources around. Fine. I'm doing that with the plastic that's being taken from Gleba over to Vulcanus to make the low density structures and the blue circuits free, which makes the rocket launches free from there. No, it doesn't. I'm still paying for the rocket fuel to go into those. So yeah, Vulcanus, the rocket launches are not quite free. The low density structures are free. The blue circuits are free. But the rocket fuel is still being made from squishing coal down. And I don't think there's anything I can do about that. I could ship in rocket fuel, I suppose. Ship in rocket fuel from Gleba where it is free. I am. Actually, apparently. I don't know where I'm getting that from, but apparently I am shipping rocket fuel. Yeah, I am shipping rocket fuel in. So, yeah, okay, take it back. Rocket fuel is free. Who knew? Gleba or Fulgora would be quite a good place for producing large quantities of rocket fuel because you've got those infinite oil oceans. You just need to crack quite a lot. You just need to do quite a lot of cracking, which requires water, but then you've got loads of ice coming out of the recycling process, so that's probably okay. You'd be wanting to ship the... But then this assumes you're shipping in blue circuits and low density structures, which we've established we already can do from here anyway. So yeah, Vulcanus could be sending its plastic. No, it's like LDS and blue circuits over to Fulgora in exchange for rocket fuel being sent back the opposite way. So yeah, getting lots of ships flying around like this makes a lot of sense. I probably should have done more of that. I don't really know why I didn't. I don't have a good excuse, but I certainly should have done. Yeah, the thing is, you then need to set up your combinator to display when you last got glebbed, and that's the tricky part. Shipping calcite to Norvis and doing science there is interesting. So when you say most of the science, you mean presumably most of the sort of red, green, grey, blue, purple, yellow, all of those sciences you do there presumably. Now I did consider that, but the free metal on Vulcanus was just too much to pass up, so I moved many of them over here. So that gets passed. That gets yellow science talked about. So in the future, yeah, if I played it again in exactly the same way, if I played Vanilla Space Age again. I can't remember where I talked myself into. I think it's probably still Fulgora, but shipping the blue circuits and low density structures because you want them as well for rocketry. Then white science. Oh boy. Well, that was interesting. So we had that's being done in the Spacey McSpaceface, which is just a space platform floating over Norvis that does white science. It doesn't do anything else, I don't think. It might drop calcite. Yes, it drops calcite down to Norvis as well, but basically it just drops white science on Norvis whenever it needs it. And this has had its fair share of problems, mostly to do with how getting the chunks out of here and getting them fed back round again to feed back in. And I did something dumb, I think, and I can't remember what it was, but I managed to make it fail anyway. It kept jamming up, but now I have sorted that problem out now. So yeah, white science, obvious. Then let's get on to orange science. I talked about orange science earlier. That's obviously being made on Vulcanus because you have to. Actually, do you actually genuinely have to? Yeah, yes, you do. It has to be crafted on Vulcanus. So I am. But then you'd be silly not to, because that's where all of your tungsten comes from anyway. So why wouldn't you? And so yeah, I seem to be short of tungsten triangles, which is fun. But anyway, yeah, that's being done here. There's a load of machines. That's fine. That's fairly easy. Red and green in space. I mean, yeah, you could. The problem you run into, I would think, with that is that if you have a ship making things, you can just have it floating in space, like the Space Face here, where it just sits there and makes it. But the problem is, if you stick it in Norvis orbit, you don't get very many resources coming in. Now that's okay and that's why this is so long like this. That's okay for white science because you don't need to make all that much of it. It's quite cheap. But if you started trying to make the red and green, I think you'd be getting through quite a lot. So you then end up having to have a ship that flew around in order to sort of travel around between. I don't know. You could have it fly between Norvis and Fulgora and back again, or choose the one that has the most. Excuse me. Choose the one that has the most metallic asteroids as you fly along it, and just fly back and forth. And whenever you get to Norvis, unload. Yeah, that would work quite nicely. You could do that. In fact, one thing I would quite like to do is make a spaceship that just makes all the science packs in space just for fun. So that would be a good starting point on that. But I haven't. But that's a thing you certainly could do. Making it in space certainly makes. I can see the logic behind it. It gets around the costs of launching it up in a rocket as well, which is nice. So you wouldn't be getting through as much blue circuit and low density structure and rocket fuel over on Vulcanus. So yeah, fair enough. Exactly, Inks. Yes, you need them to. Yeah, you need the ship to be travelling around, which I think I've done with. It was the Quality Street, wasn't it? Yes, Quality Street. At least normally. Let's have a look. We'll fly from. It's gone temporary to Norvis. It's waiting for. Oh, I see. I've broken it by doing that. Okay, clear that up. Right. So it's requesting some more parts. It needs some more uranium fuel cells and some more of these things. In fact, I have to remove those two. So the problem is that Norvis has run out of uranium. I'd fix that if I was going to carry on playing, but I'm probably not. That was the extra mine you saw over on the right hand side when we were looking at Norvis. The one that was getting all the biter attention because I fiddled with something. Anyway, yes, it's flown over here because of the intro. But yes, this is basically designed to go back and forth between Vulcanus and Fulgora, and then whenever we need it, it can unload these quality low density structures onto Fulgora and quality other stuff as required to make sure it's got everything it needs in order to produce the. I don't know why it's got quality ice. We should get rid of that. Make sure that Fulgora's got all the quality ingredients in order to make high quality stuff. But yes, for the reason we were just discussing, that's why this ship has it travels back and forth. Now, actually, this ship is not. I've realised this ship is not getting the fuel up because it's filled up with ice. Specifically ice 5, which is useless and should not be being passed over to here. So let's do that. And just throw it off into the void of space. I do enjoy that you're allowed to pollute space as much as you like. That's fun. So yeah, we'll start chucking those out. These are running. Yeah. So now we can. So that's going to eventually create a gap in here. How much have we got? 20. And eventually it's going to create a gap. Although we're probably going to end up filling it up with low density structures or something like that. But then once we've got a gap there, we're launching something. Now, yes, there we go. Now we can launch those uranium fuel cells up to get them up here and allow the ship to carry on working. But for the time being, we're just going to get rid of all of that ice, and then the ship will, start working again. That's why I got onto this point. This is the one that does travel around between the two places in order to actually get the resources. Yeah, this one does not. This one just sits in orbit over Fulgora and throws copper at it, and sometimes iron. It's a bit rubbish, to be honest, and that's sort of why I didn't really carry on with the just floating resource platforms like this, because they're not very good, should we say, as Inks has said. Okay, what's the next science pack to go and look at? So we looked at that one. Okay, agriculture we've had a good look at already. EM, we had a bit of a look on Fulgora when I was talking about it earlier, and I said there wasn't enough room for it here, but this again isn't too bad. It's just passing things through, and as long as you don't run out of batteries, it's just make this to make this to make this to make this to make this, and put them all together to make the pink sciences. They were they're probably one of the more complicated science packs because you require 4 relatively difficult things to make, one of which in particular has a lot of steps that go into it. So I think this is probably the most challenging of the ones I've done. But yeah, it was fine, made it, but it needs to be a lot bigger to keep up with the demand. So whenever we do a pink science based research, we find that the Hello Nurse, the ship that carries that over, starts to really struggle because it can't get up to the 5,000 it needs. So hopefully, while we're doing the low density structure productivity research, we're going to stockpile plenty of this over on Fulgora, so that when we start doing the research productivity, which uses a bit of absolutely everything, we'll have a decent amount of pink science available. Yes, I apparently have been staying up too late. It's just I always do. I'm very bad at going to bed on time, particularly when I get a raid at an extremely opportune moment in the stream, because then the streams tend to end up running on a lot longer than they otherwise would, because I go, oh, I've got 40 people watching. I can't stop streaming. This is great. Also, sometimes I get the one more build problem, and just keep going for that reason as well. What's next? The cryo science packs on Aquilo. We talked about that a bit. You need to start harvesting the lithium and things, bring all that together, and then I came up with what I think is a reasonably elegant build along here. And yeah, that produces the science packs, of which we currently have plenty. And then finally, there's the Promethium sciences, which are currently being made by the Fingers Crossed, which is at the moment it's parked over Why are you parked over Norvis still? Why have you not cleared off? Oh, because we haven't been using these science packs, so it's just got plenty, so it's happy. Yeah, so this is my current. It's not quite state of the art ship design, but it's about as close. It's as close as it gets without me going and trying to resurrect the one that got destroyed right at the beginning of the stream. Spoilers. A stretch probably helps. And a drink. Well, I don't know. I've only got water, but maybe it'll perk me up a little bit. We shall see. I think the caffeine content of water is quite low. Yeah, so these ships, I'm quite pleased with the design. I hope you're not too sick of them, because I've been tweaking this basic design for the last 2 months. I don't know how long it's been that I've been trying to get the Promethium ships running. But yeah, they've got a decent number of guns across the front to protect them against whatever comes in. A load of crushers in here, and control systems that monitor how much molten metal we've got in there, and then turn the crushers on and off as appropriate. It's probably filled. Yes, it's filled up with all the ammunition, as you'd hope by the amount of time it's been sitting here. And then further down, we've got systems that will turn the carbon into coal, into explosives, into railgun ammo, into rockets. There's a bit of fuel being produced at the bottom, and then there's this massive area down here to store all of the Promethium rocks that we pick up. This is big enough to store about 16,000 of them, which is pretty good, I would say. Could be made even bigger, but I think I'd probably, if I needed more, I'd probably go for having a second ship, because then it wouldn't need to fly quite as far out into the dangerous areas of interstellar space. So it would be in a little bit less danger, and it probably be, and also you'd then get the sort of the stagger of one ship arriving, then the other ship arriving, and that doing it that way is a bit better for inputs. Now, one thing I would like would be to stop it bringing eggs up when it's run out of Promethium, because this just feels wasteful. We're wasting rockets to bring them up, and then we're just sort of spewing them off out the side of the ship over here. Now, okay, rockets aren't exactly expensive at this stage of the game. It doesn't really matter. It just seems wasteful and wrong, and sometimes some of them hatch as well, which is also horrible. But I don't think I can request things based on circuit conditions, and therefore I don't think I can turn the request for the eggs off based on running out of Promethium. Now, normally the ship would just depart as soon as it runs out of Promethium, but on this particular occasion, we've got so many science packs stockpiled on the ground and stockpiled in the ship. What's going on? Yeah, OBS turn 20. This seems to be working. So,